Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking literally everything you thought you knew about that map you stared at in grade school and revealing the massive blind spots it left behind. We're going to recontextualize our most basic geographical assumptions. You see, translating a 3D globe onto a flat 2D piece of paper is incredibly challenging, and maps have a funny way of tricking our brains into believing things that simply aren't true. So today, we're diving into the data and the actual geography to reveal the hidden reality of the United States.
So I really want you to ask yourself, do you think you know the map of the United States? You're probably picturing it in your head right now. You've got the jagged coastlines, those nice, neat rectangular states in the middle, the sweeping borders. But what if I told you that the flat image in your mind is hiding some absolutely wild anomalies? The geography of this country is actually packed with bizarre truths that shatter our everyday perception.
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1. Hidden Natural Extremes. 134 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, that is not just an uncomfortably hot summer day. That staggering number represents the hottest air temperature ever recorded on Earth. And get this, it wasn't recorded in the middle of the Sahara Desert. No, this mind-blowing temperature was recorded right here in the US, specifically in Death Valley, California. It completely reframes how we think about the environmental extremes that exist right in our own backyard. All right, from the searing heat of the valley, let's look up. Way, way up. Let me ask you a quick question. What is the tallest mountain on Earth? Go ahead and mentally picture your answer. If you're like pretty much everyone else, the immediate name that jumps into your mind is Mount Everest, right? It's the ultimate symbol of extreme height. Well, prepare to have that expectation completely subverted. Yes, Mount Everest holds the crown for the highest elevation above sea level. But there is a massive geographical technicality hiding beneath the ocean's surface. Mount Mauna Kea in Hawaii sits at about 13,800 feet above sea level. But if you measure the height of the mountain from its actual physical base at the bottom of the ocean floor all the way to its top, Mauna Kea is actually taller than Everest's height above sea level. It's just a perfect example of how changing our point of measurement completely changes our understanding of the world.
Let's move on and see how this builds. Part 2, bizarre borders and boundaries. So it's not just the natural geography that's deceptive. The lines we've drawn on the map ourselves are just as strange, if not stranger. Think about the shape of states like Colorado or Wyoming. They're basically giant rectangles, completely defined by perfectly straight lines drawn by surveyors. But Hawaii is the only state whose borders don't have a single straight line. Unlike all the other states, which rely on at least some geometric, man-made lines to define where they end and begin, Hawaii's borders are entirely dictated by the natural, curving coastlines of its islands. It's a pretty beautiful exception to the rule of the American map.
But when we get back to the mainland, historical mapping quirks create some incredible anomalies. Take this, for instance. There's a small part of Minnesota, known as the Northwest Angle, that is completely separated from the rest of the state by a lake, and it's entirely surrounded by Canada. Imagine that. It's a piece of U.S. land belonging to Minnesota that you literally cannot walk to from the rest of the state without crossing a lake or going through a totally different country. It's a fascinating quirk of historical border drawing that defies all geographical logic.
Now, what's really interesting about this next point is the concept of being triple landlocked. We all know what landlocked means, having no coastline. But being equally distant from all oceans by state count is an entirely different level of isolation from the sea. And this is a status uniquely held by one single state, Nebraska. Depending on which way you travel, you have to cross exactly 3 state borders to hit the ocean. It basically places Nebraska at the absolute geometric center of land isolation in the U.S. And before we move off of borders and names, here's a quick punchy piece of trivia that always trips people up. The city of Washington is not in Washington state. It's a naming convention guaranteed to confuse middle schoolers and tourists alike, but it perfectly highlights how our labels completely contradict our mental maps. Washington, D.C. is on the East Coast, while Washington State is all the way on the upper West Coast, literally thousands of miles apart. All right, heading into our final section. Part 3, Breaking the Compass, Directional Anomalies. Let's start with a simple compass direction. What is the southernmost point of the USA? If you look at a standard map of the lower 48 states, your eyes are immediately drawn to the tip of Florida. Or if you remember that Hawaii exists, you might think, it's out in the Pacific, it must be Hawaii.
Well, the crucial point is, if you guessed either of those, you've fallen for the map's illusion. The reality, the southernmost point of the USA is actually in American Samoa.
Because American Samoa is a U.S. territory, it officially holds the title for the southernmost land under the American flag, located way down in the South Pacific Ocean. Our mental maps often conveniently crop out the territories, giving us a highly distorted view of where the country actually begins and ends.
But to truly break the compass, we have to talk about Alaska. Alaska is a massive state. In fact, it accounts for roughly 20%, or 1/5 of the entire U.S. territory. When they put that little inset box of Alaska at the bottom of a standard map, they scale it down so drastically that we completely lose our grasp of its monstrous size. But here's the crazy contrast. Despite holding 1/5 of the landmass, less than 1% of the total U.S. population lives there. The sheer emptiness, the vast, rugged expanse of Alaska is almost impossible to fully comprehend until you see these two metrics right side by side. And because of its immense size and its incredibly unique location on the globe, Alaska completely shatters our directional understanding of the map. Alaska is famously the northernmost state, stretching way up into the Arctic Circle. Because it reaches so far out into the Pacific, it is obviously the westernmost state as well. But here is the absolute kicker. It is also the easternmost state. Wait, what? How is that even possible? Well, this brilliantly illustrates how mapping lines create wild trivia. The 180th meridian, the longitudinal line that divides the Western Hemisphere from the Eastern Hemisphere, literally crosses straight through Alaska's Aleutian Islands. Because it pushes past that line, a small part of Alaska physically exists in the Eastern Hemisphere, making it the most northern, most western, and most eastern state, all at the exact same time. It's a geographical paradox that proves how forcing a three-dimensional globe onto flat paper creates arbitrary yet totally fascinating illusions. The way we visualize our world is shaped by the tools we use to measure it, and sometimes those tools create incredible illusions. From boiling valleys to mountains measured from the ocean floor, from isolated pockets of land to states that stretch into entirely different hemispheres, the geography of this country is a giant puzzle that defies common sense. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. If our simple map of the U.S. hides this many illusions, what other basic facts about our world are just waiting to be debunked? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.